Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us today for the Northside Youth Enrichment Fund grant information session. I'm Coco. I'm the managing consultant with Northside Funders Group, and I'm excited to talk to you about this funding opportunity. So what we're going to be talking about today is briefly, who is Northside Funders Group, a little bit of background on that. What is the Northside Youth Enrichment Fund? Where did this idea come from? Also, we'll get into the fund criteria and eligibility. And then we really want to share with you what we learned from running the Northside Youth Enrichment Fund last year and what may have changed from last year's application to how we're running the process this year. We'll also be discussing the review and award process and timeline, and then we will engage in a Q&A after the presentation is completed. So first things first, Northside Funders Group was founded in 2008, and it essentially is a grant-making collaborative. So there are member institutions that are from philanthropy or public institutions like Hennepin County who join together to advance positive change on the North Side. Now, while Northside Funders Group has been around for a long time, there have been several evolutions of the work of the Northside Funders Group. But a few things have stayed the same. One, that we are still focused on supporting efforts by the North Side on the North Side. What also has remained the same is a focus on economic development and education. Now, the ways in which we've supported that work and what specifically within those two strategic buckets may have changed. So at this point in time, our economic development work is very much focused on supporting BIPOC developers with a specific focus on Black developers, and providing working capital to small businesses across the North Side. The education work had somewhat gone on hiatus for a couple of years, and the Northside Youth Enrichment Fund is actually the outcome of sort of exploring and bringing back that funding priority. So I won't talk about it too much on this slide since it's really the subject of the whole presentation. Northside Funders Group also supports events with sponsorships. So our sponsorships are $2,500 per event. And we really believe this is an important component of the work because we know that having events like Flow or Black Friday on Broadway or Juneteenth are all opportunities for community to come together. They create opportunities for commerce to take place on the North Side, and they just really strengthen that connective tissue in the community. So if you want to learn more about any of those things, you can head to our website and get information on that. But you're here to learn more about the Northside Youth Enrichment Fund. So as a little bit of background, again, we had been focusing on education work previously, but that work had maybe sat a little more formally within sort of the structured education system. And what we really wanted to do with this fund is to acknowledge that young people experience learning and enrichment opportunities inside and outside of the classroom via mentorships peer-to-peer or adult to young people, through extracurricular activities, maybe sports or music, writing. And so we really wanted to take an expansive view of how young people experience enrichment opportunities. Additionally, we wanted to acknowledge that in certain communities, access to enrichment opportunities or the tools to have enrichment opportunities are more readily accessible or better funded versus what we've seen across the Northside ecosystem. And so our thinking here was to say, what if we could have this fund function in that way where it's very flexible dollars and can be applied to a lot of different uses, as long as, again, it aligns with that piece around enrichment opportunities, which we will be getting into some of the core definitions here in the next slide. So what you should know is that this fund is $140,000 is the total available dollars that we will be putting out this year. Last year, it was $75,000, and so we were almost doubled the fund, which is very exciting for us. We also increased the grant size. Last year it was up to 10,000, and this year we're looking at grants up to 15,000. The grant type is a project or general operating grant. The reason we kind of talk about both is that we've seen applications come in from both very large institutions, like maybe a school, but the application itself is looking at a very specific project or program within that school. And so that would fit a project grant, where in other cases we saw applications come in from sort of smaller nonprofit organizations, or even just entities that are simply running that program. And so those are seen as more general operating. So in terms of priority constituency, we are looking to see projects, ideas, programs, and your proposals really target Northside youth and students between the ages of 10 and 20. And so there will be some specific questions in the application that will ask you to identify who you work with. Finally, in the same vein of kind of keeping this fund expansive, we also wanted to, again, make sure that we acknowledge that these enrichment opportunities can be led by a number of different types of leaders who sit in different types of institutions. So the fund is eligible for a 501c3, so a nonprofit organization, but also a for-profit entity. And so you will be asked, in the application, how you self-identify. We also will receive, obviously, applications from Northside schools as well, district and not. Fiscally sponsored organizations are also welcome to apply. And we just ask that you would submit the fiscal sponsor's operating budget with your financial attachments. So what are some examples of what you could use these funds for? So again, with enrichment opportunities, we want to acknowledge that there are lots of different pathways that create that enrichment. And so we've seen applications come in that requested resources to pay for equipment. So for example, if you're running a photography program for youth, those cameras can be really expensive. And if you need a camera per young person in your program, that can get spendy. So equipment is a totally eligible use of funds. We've also seen folks talk about youth stipends. So some of y'all may want to pay young people to participate in your program or do some aspect of the project that you're proposing. Also, we know you work hard to put on the work, and so you need to get paid and pay for your staff time. So that is an eligible use. And then, of course, you need to be able to say, hey, my program is happening, so you may need to spend some money on marketing, planning events, and so forth. So these are just examples. Again, these grants really function as very flexible dollars for your program. So in the budget section, you'll be able to break down what the expected uses of funds will be. And of course, and our perspective is really this: it's like, what you need to use the money for. Our concern is that if you were to potentially use this grant to support a adult workforce program, that would obviously not be an eligible use because it's not consistent with the goals of the Northside Youth Enrichment Fund. So let's get into some key definitions. So how do we talk about who counts, who's a Northsider, and also what are enrichment opportunities? So we wanted, again, to be pretty wide open about what constitutes a Northsider. So we wanted to really think about anyone who lives, works, goes to school in North Minneapolis, and also projects that are based in or can show that they are working with a majority Northside constituency. So that's kind of how we're thinking about that. And there are, again, questions throughout the proposal that help you build that case so that we can understand how you're connected to the Northside. Enrichment opportunities are defined as projects, initiatives, or programs that support access to experiences that perhaps otherwise would be out of reach for Northside youth. So, again, we know that a school trip can be extremely enriching and eye-opening to a young person, or the mentorship component, specialized equipment, which we've talked about a little bit. So all of those things count as um, enrichment opportunities. So what did we learn from running the Northside Youth Enrichment Fund last year, and what can we share with you that can help you best prepare a great application? So first things first, we were overwhelmed by the response. So we ultimately had 56 applications, again, for a fund of 75,000. So we were expecting to make, between 7 and 10 awards in that pool. We were ultimately able to do 9 because we were able to go back to the Northside Funders Group membership and say, hey, this is what the committee wanted to advance. Can we add a little bit more to the pool so we can just move forward the full slate? So that's what we saw. And we saw, applications again come in from nonprofit and for-profit entities, as well as schools, district schools, charter schools, etc. So a wide variety of applicants as well. So we'll get into this a little bit later, so I won't dive super deep into it, but we do have a community review panel who will be doing the reading and decision-making about who will receive grants. And I think what we saw last year was that the review committee was really looking for applicants to clearly articulate and show how their program was directly creating enrichment opportunities for youth. So I think, folks really want to be able to see that connection spelled out and not have to make, their own assumptions about how that translates. So that's a little bit of a tip on that. Additionally, last year we did not require folks to submit formal budgets. We did ask for you to articulate how you thought you would use the money. But it turned out the committee was really interested to have more information about your budgets. So this year we've added that as a requirement for submission. And I will say we really treat budgets as a reflection of values. So as you're thinking about how you're gonna spend this money and allocate Northside Youth Enrichment Fund dollars, in case your project is costs more than the 15,000 that you're eligible to get through NYF, then the budget is a great place for you to talk about that. Additionally, from a portfolio perspective, we saw 4 major buckets of types of proposals that were received. So one of them was around health, wellness, and culture. So quite a few folks submitted proposals that really focus on these components as important lifelong skills for young people to be prepared to enter into adulthood. Additionally, we saw quite a few also proposals that centered on athletics. So it might have been boxing, basketball, football, and really using sports and athletics as a conduit for teaching, lifelong skills like teamwork and commitment to a goal and that type of thing. We also saw several proposals that focused around mentorship programs. So we saw both peer-to-peer mentoring, as well as a significant adult to young person mentoring situation. And finally, there were quite a few applications too that looked at how to set up young people to think and experience entrepreneurship. So meaning, teaching skills or putting folks in situations where they can have a business idea, have the advice and coaching as to how to realize that idea, and then perhaps create opportunities to implement it. So those were some major buckets. It'll be interesting to see if we add to that list in this next iteration of NYEF. So as mentioned, a little bit, we at NFG felt very strongly about wanting this process to really center Northside youth perspectives. And so to us, that also means that in making decisions about reviewing these proposals and who should receive resources, we thought young people should be at the table and centered in the process. So we are repeating this same process as we did last year, but we're enlarging the committee a little bit. And so we are expecting to have 2 NFG members and 4 to 6 Northside youth participate in this process. This committee meets for an orientation where we talk about, what are the criteria, what are some things that we'll be looking for from a portfolio perspective, things like that. And then they will meet as a full group, and that process will be facilitated by me. And we actually read and discuss those proposals all together. And, again, the reason we think this is important is that we actually want to create an enrichment opportunity as we put out dollars to the north side to support other programs that do that. And so the NFG members are really there to be curious, to ask really good questions through process, but also to, again, center Northside youth perspectives and support maybe some skill building where necessary as sort of professional philanthropists. So what is the timeline? So we opened the applications on November 20th. So they have been open for about 20 days. And we are hosting 2 grant information sessions. So one was held last week in person, and then this one is the virtual one that we are currently recording. The application will remain open until February 9th. Just because I know this becomes a question, February 9th at 11:59 p.m. is when we will close the application. So you have all day on February 9th to get your application in. One quick note I will say is you don't get brownie points for submitting before others. So we will not be starting to look at any of the applications until the application process closes. And I say that to say that last year, some proposals that came in were really bare bones. There wasn't a whole lot of information that was put into the proposal. And so we just really want you to put your best foot forward and really put in the time to explain your idea so that the committee can make the best decisions. So finally, the committee will come together in February to read, review, and vote on which applications will be moving forward for funding. And then award announcements and payments are expected to go out in March of 2024. So I also wanted to provide, before we close out for Q&A, examples of previous grantees. So just so y'all know, we announced the opening of the NYF on our blog on the website, and there is a full list of the grantees who received funding through the NYF last year on that blog post. So this is a selection of those, and I just wanted to provide them to you. So Female Fitness and Empowerment Program came from a for-profit applicant. And this project was really looking at offering after school and summer programs for Northside High School female students. And they were working specifically with different high schools across the North Side. And the link that they, really talked about was the practice of having holistic health and wellness as something that is empowering and skill building for young women as they engage, in growth and their next steps in life. Lucy Laney Boxing Club was another example. This was a request that centered on boxing as a core skill and activity that is an after-school program that teaches, again, young people how to foster connections, how to engage with peers, how to be committed to a goal, and so forth. So these are two examples that I shared just now, where one was more focused on high school level students, where the second one was certainly a younger age group. And then the Man Up Club mentorship was also one that I wanted to highlight for y'all, because we did receive, as I show in these examples, applications that were gender specific. And so this one was well received by the committee because it had this particular focus um, on BIPOC and young men who may need a kind of different environment of support and mentorship from other men in the program. So these are some examples, and that actually concludes the content portion of the info session. So I will now stop the recording so that you all can ask your questions freely on the call.